Hi everyone, and welcome to your Week 6 lap guide for the Advanced Mazda series. This week is at Phillip Island, and my name's Adam. Let's start by having a look at my hot lap. So we start the lap rolling into turn 1 here, a corner which is actually relatively easy in this car. You need to downshift to 4th, which you do just sort of as you lift off the throttle. You want to lift off to about 20% or so, so like this. And then downshifting to 4th really just helps with rotation, and you get a bit more torque as well, which you will need to get a better run. Just a slight bit of time off throttle and then back on full throttle quite early, right sort of about here, and then carry full throttle all the way into turn 2. You can use basically all of the track here. Since turn 2 is a very long corner, you don't really need to think about compromising your exit from turn 1 to get a better entry into turn 2. The corner is so long that you basically can just do a double apex throughout the whole corner, and you don't really need to think about the entry. Since turn 2 is so long, it's actually quite hard to find a reference. I like to use this like sort of as the corner starts, I start to brake. So you can kind of look at the curb here and see where it starts to curve just a slight bit, and that's where you want to start braking. Braking relatively hard actually initially, sort of 60% or so, and then releasing that brake. Sort of you can use this like Marshall post here as a reference. That's sort of where you want to drop off to maybe 15% brake and release the car out to about middle of the track. And then you can use the second Marshall post here as sort of a second reference for when you want to get on the throttle. So we get sort of just a bit on the throttle here, mid-corner. And then just before this post, we can go to full throttle. You can use this post as sort of your reference, but you're gonna need to practice when you wanna get on the throttle, because it is quite hard to judge just from looking at references, since there aren't that many. But this line is quite hard to see, sort of as we're looking at the car in third person here, so I want to take a second look at it in Delta. So here we are looking at this corner in Delta, turn 2, and here you can actually see quite well visualized the line that I'm taking, as well as my inputs. You can see that my braking is almost all done in a straight line before the corner, and here I'm basically just trail braking for this last bit before I get back on the throttle. And the line I'm taking is quite wide during the first half of the corner, but then I'm taking quite a tight line on the exit just because of basically how the corner is shaped. It's quite a tight radius to begin with, and then it opens up so you can go quite wide on entry and then keep the car tight. So let's go back to the track and have a look at the rest of the lap. And as we exit the corner, using the whole track here on exit, don't really want to drop a wheel into the gravel or the grass, but you can use the curb just fine. It's very flat. And then this section is very easy flat, and we want to keep the car all the way to the left as we brake into this first hairpin here. Braking point is, I like to use this 100 board and this white line. So just before that, we want to get quite hard on the brakes, braking all in a straight line, basically up to 90 or 80%. And then keeping that brake until we start turning in, which is actually quite a late turning point. And that's where we want to release the brakes down to about 10 or 15%. Keeping that almost into the apex, just releasing it slightly before. And that's where we want to get back on the power. And getting back on the power relatively early, since we did take that quite late entry. And using lots of track on exit, so we can use this green Astro here. It's not that slippery. And this blue and white curb as well. It's very flat, doesn't really upset the car, so you can use it just fine. Second hairpin. Braking point is the end of this blue and white curb here. So we gotta get on the brakes about here. And quite light on the brakes this time, since we are turning and braking at the same time. But once again, relatively late on entry. It's a very long corner, so you need to think about that when you're picking your line. And also carrying brake quite far into the corner. Getting back on the throttle just as we touch the apex here. And quite hard on the throttle to carry the speed onto this back straight. You can use this curb here once again, the blue and white curb on exit, but try not to put too much of your wheels into the gravel. You can touch it just a slight bit like I did here, but any more than this is gonna slow you down. But this basically it would be optimal to have your outside wheels right here. I went a slight bit wide here, but it doesn't really hurt lap time that much. Going up the hill, you want to keep the car as straight as possible, taking the shortest line as you can. You can use the curbs to do this. They don't really slow the car down, so you can use them to make your line shorter. And then putting the car all the way to the right as we go into this left here. I like to once again look at where the curb starts to curve into the corner for my turning point. And then this shift in the sort of surface of the curb you can use as braking point. So just after this shift here, where the curb starts to get a bit more rough, that's where you want to start braking. And you want to be really light on the brakes here, since we are at quite high speed and turning and braking at the same time. So any more would upset the car quite a lot. Rail braking with quite light brakes, and then back on the throttle quite early. Because we can use a bit of track here. We can put the car sort of in the middle of the track, and it's not really gonna hurt our entry into the right-hander here, since we can get back to the left in time for our entry. The braking point for this right-hander here is the 50 board. Just slightly before that, we want to get on the brakes. Relatively hard, since we can brake in a straight line. And then bleeding off into the corner. Relatively tight on entry, since there is a bit of camber here, which can help us. So you don't really need to open up the entry all that much. Getting on the throttle relatively early, but we want to keep the car sort of to the right here. So about a car width or so from the exit is where you want to be. You don't want to overdo it and put the car like over here, because that's just gonna slow down your exit, but you do need to open up a little bit as you enter this left here, so you can keep the throttle flat, going through the left. This left here is quite easy if you set up the entry. So just basically keeping the throttle flat, taking as straight of a line as you can, and then using the track here on exit, you can use the curb. Once again, the second left here, quite an easy corner. You really just want to keep the car as straight as possible to scrub off as little speed as possible. So it's not really that hard of a corner. And that's the lap finished of Phillip Island. So there you go. Hopefully this will help you during your races this week. If you want to use my setup in your races, you can find that on Coach Dave Delta. Any help you might need, setup-wise or otherwise iRacing or Coach Dave related, you can find on the Coach Dave Discord. And any more hot laps or onboards you can find on the Coach Dave YouTube channel. See you next week.